Well, welcome everybody to our webinar, PersonaLive Spend. I'm super excited for today. It's the first time with a psychographic segmentation that you will be able to see spend across every segment in the nation and across 2,000 different brands. So if you're a retailer, this means you'll be able to see your market share versus competitors by segment. If you're a property owner, you'll be able to get intel on any trade area and how much people will spend on a particular product or a particular brand retailer in that trade area. So for that reason, I am really pumped. We've partnered with Affinity Solutions that has over 150 million credit cards that we've codified to our segmentation. So without further ado, let's get going. I'm going to introduce Kalyan Lanka. He is the CPO of Affinity Solutions. Welcome, Kalyan. And then my name is Leiden Faust. I am the CEO of Spatial. So let's go
Thank you for
through
having me.
yeah, you bet. Let's go through an agenda today. So real quick, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So you'll notice on the bottom of Zoom, you will have two little options to input text. One is chat, but then you'll have another one that'll say Q&A. If you have questions, put that in the Q&A and we will hit that in the end. And if you just want to chat with your other webinar participants, go ahead and roll with it. You can chat with them as well, but we will make sure to grab those. We got 15 minutes at the end. And I would say be liberal with that. I'm excited to talk about this. I know Kalyan's excited to talk about this. So ask those questions and don't wait to the end. You'll forget your question. Okay. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about the PersonaLive platform. I know a lot of you are current customers, and so I'm going to be very brief on that. And then second, we're going to talk about the Affinity Solutions dataset. Colleen will be walking you through the details there, and then we're going to be talking about what specific use case this now allows when you combine both of those. I want to show you a demo of that. I want to share an offer at the end of this for you guys, and then we're going to do a Q&A at the end. Okay, so let's talk about the PersonaLive segmentation first. So who is Spatial? So we've been around and have launched the PersonaLive segmentation in 2020, and we help retailers segment their customers so they can resonate, rank the best customer segments, and eventually reach those customers. Like I said, we launched in 2020. And we now have over 750 retailers and commercial property owners that use this to understand their customers beyond demographics. And that's where we really focus is how do we understand customers beyond demographics? I'll take you just a step back and we'll look at what our options are for segmenting customers. So if you're either segmenting your actual point of sale customer data or your e-commerce data, or if you're a property owner and you are segmenting the mobile devices or foot traffic coming to your location, these are generally your options for segmenting your customers. One is demographics, the study people usually by their census data. In the 1970s, we developed psychographic segmentation, which is the study of people based on where they live. And typically they will be created by creating clusters of people based on their census block group information. And then they'll apply survey data to those people to see what those people might do. This is where we saw an opportunity with PersonaLive is to segment people based on what they actually do and not what they might do. What do I mean by what they actually do? So PersonaLive is a multi-dimensional segmentation, and we use a couple of factors. One is social media. It's primarily what are people following. Two is mobile devices. The people in that block group, what types of retail do they go to? Three is individual records. So the age, income, marital status of a person at a household. This is what separates me. It gives me a different segment between myself and my 80-year-old neighbor. Because sometimes birds of a feather flock together, but also sometimes they don't. We use census block group information. So there are some things like diversity index that you can only actually get at a block group, which is very predictive of how people will behave. And then finally, and this is what I'm excited to share with you guys today, from the beginning, when we created the segmentation, we always imagined that we could actually incorporate what really matters, how much people spend into this data set. And when psychographics were developed in the 1970s, they were developed almost as a proxy to answer two questions. One is, what percentage of this segment will buy from me, and how much will they spend? And by an extension of that, which one of those segments can I target such that I can beat my competitors? And that is only possible with a massive spend panel. And that is why I'm so excited to bring in the Affinity data today and apply that and codify that across all 80 of our segments. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Kalyan, who give you some details on the Affinity dataset.
Awesome. Thanks, Clayton. And first of all, congratulations on the launch and integration of spend data and insights into PersonaLive. Clayton, I've been talking about this for a while, and I was given a preview of what's about to come. I was super excited about this launch, and you nailed it, right? So we we work very closely with Spatial. They're a very strategic partner of ours. And what's really unique about them is they're taking our data, right? It's a vast amount of data. It's not an easy data set to deal with, right? It's extremely granular and scale, and they're converting it into action, right? And this is what we always preach. People spend billions of dollars, marketers, agencies, to drive one thing and one thing only. It's purchase. Right now, they're incorporating that purchase data directly into planning all the way through optimization and engagement, which is phenomenal. So let me introduce you to Affinity Solutions. So we are a consumer purchase insights database and a company that focuses on identifying and unearthing actual consumer purchase behavior. We work with several financial institutions, 3,000 plus, for over 20 years. And we have access to about 150 million credit and debit card data, really good split and representative data set, almost $1 trillion of annual spend, and 5 years of history, right? So the amount of data will allow you to slice and dice data in several different ways to get to significantly meaningful outcome-based insights on close to 5,000, 6,000 brands. If you can go to the next slide, Leiden. Now, data just with scale is not enough, right? You need dimensionality. You need to be able to slice and dice data in several different ways. Because we are sitting on a fully permissioned and deterministic database, we can add additional dimensions on top of that data, on top of that spend insight. We not only, as I mentioned, have a debit and credit card split with 5 years of historical data, we have exact merchant information, location where the transaction is happening, whether it's an online or offline transaction across all these cards. We also overlay consumer information, demographics, psychographics, geography, right? Basic information that helps us dimensionalize the data a bit about the consumer. And we have several transaction information. And because it is a deterministic data set, you can take that data and match it in a very privacy-friendly, in clean rooms with your own identifiers, right? Whether you're sitting on PII, MAIDs, or IP addresses, et cetera, we can combine these data sets together to add more value on top of the spend data. Now, scale, we talked about scale, breadth, and depth of data. Obvious question is quality, right? You can have millions of cards, but if that doesn't tell you anything about, or if it's not representative of what's happening in the US population, it's not that valuable. So we've been in this business for about 20 years. And one of the first things partners like Spatial do when they get access to our data is they go through an evaluation period, right? They try to really figure out if this data is valuable or not. Similarly, we work with several industry bodies out there. The analysis you're seeing on the screen is a comparison of our data with Census Bureau data. All right, on a month-over-month, week-over-week basis, we measure total retail spend happening in the US. We try to identify correlation of our trends with what census is reporting on a monthly basis. Now, remember, census is based on a panel, high quality, right? But we can report this on a much faster cadence and using millions of data sets. So you can see significantly high correlation. That is exactly the reason why, if you go to the next slide, we are selected as a very strategic partner for some of these industry bodies out there, right? So we are a partner for National Retail Federation. We, along with National Retail Federation, are covered on CNBC every month, where CNBC reports NRF Retail Monitor powered by Affinity Solutions. They're trying to track retail spend month over month, including seasonality on a monthly basis. We also work with several, companies or organizations like Harvard University and White House to help them if there are strategic initiatives they're undertaking. Their purchase insights will help them figure out, which programs to launch and where consumer spending is going up or down. If you can go to the next slide. And so I'm going to pass it back to Leighton here because I think it is important for our partners to tell us their view of our data. But I'm really fascinated. Again, congratulations on the launch. Would love to see this in action.
Yep, cool. Yeah, so we went through a little over, or maybe a little under a year of evaluating the different spend panel companies. And for us, I mean, in our name literally is spatial. It really matters the geography of spend. So that's one. And the second thing is we need, because we have 80 segments and we need distribution across all of those segments and to be able to be confident in inferring spend estimation across those segments. And absolutely, bar none, I was floored by how good the distribution of the geography within the Affinity Spend panel, as well as the distribution within income levels, education levels, age, and gender. And it really maps up against the census, which is really important for us because we take an entire view of the United States, not just a narrow view of a particular brand. We need to know this across all brands. So we were really impressed with that. And that's why we wanted to move forward with Affinity. And I think the results are really cool. And you guys will get to see those results today. Okay, so what's the matching process? How do we match this to our segmentation and what are we doing with it? So the first thing we do is we codify. So we attach that panel of anonymized and aggregated spend data to our 80 PersonaLive segments. We do this in a clean room process where there's no PII passed on either side. The second is we run calculations against our segments. So we're looking at things like average yearly spend, penetration rate, frequency, and category market share across all these brands for the different psychographic segments. The third is the geographic part of this, where we're charting this. We're regionalizing spend patterns for each of these brands in segments across 50 states, 210 DMAs, and then 6 regions. And finally, and this is where it gets really interesting, is we chronicle this. So every one of these transactions has a timestamp. And so we plot these spending patterns over time, and you get to see the results of some of the strategic decisions that you make as a commercial real estate company or as a retailer. You can actually see those play out with the particular segments over time. Okay, let's do it. Let's get into a demo. So if you are familiar with the PersonaLive segmentation, you know that you have an interface where you can see information across all 80 of our segments. So we split the entire US into 80 different segments, and we can level those segments up into groups. And I'm going to look at the group level, which is ultra wealthy families. So the group level will give you insights like age, income, the amount of households in a segment, what they're talking about on social media, and their retail preferences. But you're going to see 2 new tabs that are for spend now. So the first one is overall spend. So we can now see by category their spend across these different categories. So we have 20 upper level categories, and I can drop these categories into sub levels. So I can see for ultra wealthy families in particular, what are the percent purchased across active and athleisure brands, children's brands, eyewear brands, footwear brands. And like I said, you've got this across 20 different categories. So we can also see this against retail, what percentage of purchase against these retail brands, beauty and cosmetics, books, etc. But we're going to go up here and we're going to focus on active and athleisure. And I'm going to walk you through some of the stats that you're seeing here. And this is the first time that we've been able to see this at a psychographic segmentation level. So the first thing that we see is the percent purchased So we see of the panel, 10% of all the people in this ultra wealthy families segment have bought from Lululemon. Now, is that a little or a lot? You need to compare it to the base. And we see across all of the nation, 3.78% of people have bought from Lululemon. So what we find about this ultra wealthy family segment are these people are 2.7 times more likely than the average person to buy from Lululemon. Now, if you are a retailer in the athleisure category, this is good to know how you stack up against this particular segment if it's interesting to you. If you're a commercial real estate company, this is really powerful information because if these people make up 30% of your trade area, then you have a very strong data point that can give Lululemon or any of these athleisure brands conviction on why they probably need to move into your space or consider your property. But that's not all you get. You also are able to see how much these people spend. So I can break this down and say, I want to know the average yearly spend across these different retail brands, in particular in the active and athleisure category. So we can see that these people spend $388 on average on Lululemon, but they spend $440 on average. This is a 12-month running period on Alo Yoga and $467 on Arc'teryx. And you might be wondering, okay, is that true about the whole nation, or can I look at this by geography? And the answer is yes, you can cut it by geography. So if you wanted to say, I want to know what their spend is in the Southwest, for example. Well, Arc'teryx drops. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they don't have a lot of stores there, or maybe there's not a lot of e-commerce sales going on there, or maybe because it's just not as cold. But Orvis pops up to the top as the highest average yearly spend. But we can look at that in, let's say, in the Northeast, and then you actually have people spending more on Arc'teryx in the Northeast than you do in the nation. And then you can do this by states and DMAs as well. Okay, so that is a ranking across one particular category, and we're looking at the top spend across those categories. You can also see things which is really important, like frequency. And we can see in particular here, people will more frequently purchase from Fabletics because it's probably a lower ticket brand than they would the 5.1 times for Fabletics and 2.9 times for Lululemon. But if you really want to dive into one specific brand, you can do that on brand spend. So brand spend gives you a picture of these people's spend across these different subcategories and brands. So we'll look at subcategories first, and we can look at the active and athleisure subcategory. And we can see for these people, 25% of these people in the past 12 months have purchased an active or athleisure purchase. This is higher than the national average, which is 15%. So these people are 65% more likely to buy athleisure, and they spend more than the average person too. So the average person spends 384 or $48 on athleisure. These people spend 485. And as far as their apparel and accessories share of wallet, it makes up 15% of their share of wallet compared to general apparel, which makes up 33%. And you can see here in the when you look at share of wallet over time, they spent quite a bit on athleisure in particular in this past December. And again, we can break this down by the exact company. So we can look at Lululemon, and we can see within active and athleisure, Lululemon has 31% market share. And we can also cut that by region as well. Okay, so ultimately, what you can do here is with a segment spend, you can rank segment spend. So you can, for any segment of interest, you can rank what are they spending on the different retail categories. You can visualize their share of wallet within those categories, and then you can regionalize those spend patterns. But if you're watching this, I can almost guarantee you're asking the question, okay, that's really interesting, but can I flip it around the other way? Can I look at any brand and rank all the segments by that brand? And the answer is yes. And that is our Explore tool. So if you go to this Explore tab, you can type in any brand here. So we can look at Lululemon, for example, and you can get a ranking of revenue share for Lululemon. And we can look at different metrics like the percent purchased. We can look at average yearly spend, and we can cut this by PersonaLive segments, groups, age ranges, generations, or income as well. And you can also cut that by market. Now, I want to use as a demonstration here a brand that I've been thinking about lately. It's Viore. They're an athleisure brand, and they just recently raised $850 million, which is wild for me for an apparel category, in November. And they're probably wondering, how do I use these dollars? And I'm going to show you how using this, we can look at Viore's best customer segments very quickly. And then we can compare that to their competitors and see where they have strong spots and soft spots. So if I just type in Viore here, I can rank Viore, and I'm looking at the group level. I can rank them by revenue share, and I can see that 31 or 30% of all of Viore's revenue, all the spend that we see, comes from this ultra wealthy family. These people only make up 6.8% of the United States. So that is a very outsized market share with Viore in particular. And I can also look at that versus their competitor. So if we type in Aloe Yoga, for example, we can see that they're pretty competitive with Aloe Yoga. This is almost the same exact ranking, top to bottom. But if we want to get really nuanced about this and see where Viore has an advantage or a disadvantage over Aloe, I can type in Viore and I can look at their average yearly spend. So we can see here all of the segments ranked by their average yearly spend. So a Sunset Boomer will spend more on Viore than the average customer. But if we look at their base, that is what the average customer spends on Viore. And if we compare that to Aloe, you're going to see a different picture. So we see Aloe's, their average yearly spend in 12 months is 410. So already we're seeing a weakness that Viore has, which is Aloe can drive a higher LTV per customer in 12 months. So as Viore, we might want to consider that as we are expanding our customer base to make sure that we're keeping a very close eye on that LTV. Okay, and then the last thing I want to show you here is valuing a trade area. So essentially, now that we have Yori, we can see the percent of these people are purchased. So when we look at any trade area and we know ultra wealthy families are a part of that, and I'm actually going to break this down one level further into segments. So I know that 4% of Midas Might will buy from me. And I know there's another one, Suburb Chic, which I'm going to look at. 1.7% of Suburb Chic will buy from my brand. The reason I care about that is if I look at revenue share, Midas Might and Suburb Chic are right at the top. And then I can look at the average ticket size of those particular groups as well. So actually, let me do this by average yearly spend. And I can look at Midas Might, $425. And then we can look at Suburb Chic, which is $382. Now we can look at any trade area and value that trade area. And I'm going to demonstrate that on the map here. So if I want to go to the map, I can pick a location for Viore. This is one of their locations in Washington. And I think there's another location over here. Great. And then I can map those two segments that I just talked about that we see are the top 2% of their revenue share. So I can look at Midas Might on a map, and then I can look at Suburb Chic on a map, and I can see the density of those segments. So I can pick out any census block group and see how many households are in that. And then lastly, and I'm just going to look at, let's see, this particular one, I can view a report, and I can see here with our selected segments that 11% of the households in that trade area, which is 3 mile radius, 5,317 total people that are in our exact target segment. We know what percentage of them are going to buy on average, and we know how much they're going to spend. So it gives us a really quick picture of the geographies that we want to target. So ultimately, what you get here with the Explore ranking is you can rank segments across 2,000 brands. You can regionalize those patterns, and then finally, you can map that value. And the last feature that I want to show you guys here is the Trends tab. Man, the Trends tab is so cool. It is the most different kind of visual that we have seen with our brand, but it's looking at those spend patterns over time. Okay, so within Explore, you can hit Trends. And we can see I've got some athleisure brands over here. And what we're looking at here is the total category share of spend. And so across Alo Yoga, Athleta, Gymshark, and Fabletics, we can see category share. And I can just type in Viore here. And then I can type in Alo. And then we can get a picture of how competitive these brands are in particular. I don't think I got Alo in there. There we go. Oh, yeah, I want Lulu in there too. All right. So what story can we learn about these different athleisure brands? Well, we can see Lululemon has 58% market share at the beginning of the year and had a pretty good December and landed at 61%. We see Viore at 9.6%, and we see them landing at 11.9%. So that's pretty good growth in that category. But look at the Alo Yoga, 6% market share, and then they ballooned to 14% market share on Black Friday, and then they dropped down to 9%. But that's still great growth. And if I'm Viore, I'm paying attention to this because look, if I look at my month over month sales compared to last year, I can see I'm up, 18%, I'm up 31%, but Alo Yoga up 90%, 76%, 84%. Now, if I'm Viore, I'm picturing my competition a little bit differently. I may have been thinking primarily about you, Lululemon at first, but now I'm thinking like maybe I actually need to protect against Alo Yoga. And I can see we have a similar average ticket size as well. So we're competing on the same groups, but then we can cut this by segment and get really strategic. So we can go down here and say, I only want to know my spend within educated urbanites. And the picture is going to change a little bit for Viore. They see they have more strength here, 14% of educated urbanites. So that's the market share there. And then we're ending at 23% at the end of the year, but still competitive here with Alo Yoga, especially on Black Friday. So now you can look at that market share over time and then identify brands that are more competitive to you. And we've had a cohort of users that have been using this for the past 2 months. And one of the things that they have learned as retailers is, hey, maybe the person I thought was my competitor might not actually be a competitor. And maybe the people that I didn't think was I was competing against are actually taking market share. And so there's a really cool strategic positioning you can start to learn as far as what segments that you go after. Last thing I want to show before I get into the details of how Viore can kind of target this and focus specifically how they can grow segments here is the way that you're able to see the results of your decisions. So there's a brand that I've been looking at recently, and they're called Uniqlo. It's a fast fashion brand. And I saw that Uniqlo, let's see, what's the other fast fashion brands? Old Navy. So Uniqlo placed 4 different locations in Texas within 1 month. And you can see compared to Old Navy and Uniqlo, Uniqlo's got about 12% market share between these two brands. And the question is when they placed those 4 locations there in Texas in that month, did it actually work? So it was in October when they did that. So we can cut that and say, I want to look at Uniqlo sales by Texas and we can see the results. So they didn't have any stores in Texas. They're just doing e-commerce sales here. But as soon as it's announced, they went up to 7% market share in October when they opened at 14% market share. And now they're at 16% market share. So we can immediately see the results of our site selection decisions. And we can even see that by segment. Did we actually penetrate the segment that we are focusing on? Cool. So the last thing that I'll show you here, and I'll show you this really quick because I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, is you can compare brand to brand. If you are a retailer and you're trying to identify where do I focus on, which segments do I focus on to grow with. So if I'm Viore here, and I am comparing myself to that brand that we see that is growing significantly, which is Alo Yoga, I might want to ask myself, which segment do I really want to go after to win with this particular brand? And I might want to look at this by PersonaLive segments. So on the x-axis, you have Viore's revenue share. On the y-axis, you have Alo Yoga's revenue share. And we can see that Alo Yoga does a little bit better with Fusion families, which is a more of a suburban segment, and Viore does a little bit better with high risers. The size of that bubble is the amount of people in the United States that are within that segment. But right there in the middle, suburb chic is a huge segment that they are both competing significantly on. In fact, if I even cut this by Lululemon, you're going to see how important suburb chic is in that athleisure market. So that's a really high income segment that lives near the suburbs. And we can see that it makes up 8% of Lululemon's revenue share. So if I'm Viore, what I am starting to think about is how do I penetrate that particular segment? Because if I want to grow with my $850 million that I have, that is a segment that we know is spending a lot on my competitors. So that's why how you can look on an XY axis against competitors. So overall here, what can you do? You can track market share over time versus competition. You can visualize your competitors' momentum and really identify who are my competitors. And then you can find strengths and weaknesses that drive strategy. So to kind of recap this, here's the 7 ways that the game has changed with psychographic segmentation. One, you can see the percentage of each segment that have bought across 2,000 brands. And then you can see the average yearly spend for that segment. Those two metrics together allow you to map the value of any trade area for those brands. You can reveal market share across different competitors. This is something that a lot of retail brands have not been able to visualize before, and you can do this really quickly. You can identify the segments that you can win with, and then eventually determine the results of strategic decisions, just like we saw with Uniqlo when they opened up that store. We did see them take market share. And finally, you can act immediately upon results. You don't need to spend a lot of time cutting through the data. You saw me do that. I did that probably in about 10 minutes. We had a number of folks in the cohort beta testing this in the past 2 months, and here's some of the things that they've been saying about it. Ultimately, it's they had visibility into their segments that they've never been able to have before, and that made a big difference in how they're able to strategically focus on how to grow their brand. Okay, so for everyone who's stuck to the end, I want to share with you guys a special offer. So I want to share with you 1 month of PersonaLive Spend, and this is only for the folks that have been a part of this webinar. So you'll gain access for the Affinity spend data, 150 million credit cards across 2,000 brands codified to our segmentation. And as part of being this webinar, you get 4 white glove strategy sessions. So I will work directly with you and a group of your peers to really focus on what are our hidden opportunities for our brand. And then I will work with you to do a consumer code strategy audit. Now, this is for retailers in particular, where we're going to be looking at your customers, the competition that you're going up against, the channels that you'll be focusing your marketing on based on the segments that you want to target, the cultural trends that are happening within your particular segments, the creative and copy you're using to personalize your segments, and finally, conversion, looking at did it actually work and did we make progress with that segment? And then overall, that's a $10,000 value and for the price of $1,500 for the first month. And this is the sweet thing, 100% money back guarantee. So if you don't walk away with your top 5 segments, top 5 trade areas, and a planned out maneuver or your competition within 30 days, you get your money back, no questions asked. And this is an exclusive offer that's only open for 10 different customers. And that is because we have a capacity for about those 10 customers. So if you are interested in this, just go to www.spatial.ai/spend-offer. In fact, I will go there right now so you can see and just put in your email and what your use case is. And I want to focus very specifically on commercial real estate or retail. So I have a bias towards picking folks in that cohort of 10 that have those use cases. Okay, that is it. Kalyan, let's go through some of these questions. I'll start at the top. Okay, does Affinity have data for Canada? That's for you, Kalyan.
Yeah, so we are a US and UK based company. So we have data in US, we have data in UK. We are always expanding and looking at new markets. But today, those are the 2 countries we're live in.
Okay. This next one, Kalyan, I think is for you because it's a no for us. Have you made any progress in tracking spend and segmentation in tourist districts for both domestic and international customers? So this one, Tom, is definitely a no for us. All we're looking at is these segments. Kalyan, would you say anything to that?
Yeah, on our side, we know the physical location of the cardholder. But since we are dealing primarily in US and UK only, we do see spend of our US cardholders outside US, but I don't think that's the use case you're looking at. You're looking at international customers spending money here. We don't have those cards unless
Kalyan,
from
he
UK.
also says domestic too. So I just think there's a general interest in tourism. You would have that, yeah.
We do.
Cool.
We do have domestic spend, yes.
Yeah, so Tom, for that one, definitely reach out to Affinity. We're going to show you the segment spend, but they can actually show you the where that spend is coming from, whether it's a tourist or not. Good question. Next question, are the tables exportable? Yes, the tables are exportable. So on stats, if you want to download this and visualize it, you just hit download CSV and you will get that. Okay. You mentioned chronicling spend data over time. So will this data set continue to update? And what is the update schedule, monthly, weekly, et cetera? This is amazing. Callian, they sent it over weekly. So that is the update schedule. What is the time period of the information in the spend category and how often is it updated? A lot of questions about that. We're using 12-month running spend here. And again, it's updated weekly. Rad says Ian Ross. Thank you, Ian. That's awesome. Okay. Are these new tools something that will be available through third-party solutions where the solution is powered by PersonaLive? It will be available within the PersonaLive dashboard. So if you have access to the PersonaLive dashboard with spend, they will be available to you. We've got data sets that we sell through third parties, and those data sets obviously don't have spend as a part of them, but it is available through this dashboard. Okay. Do you have indicators about when promotions are run, which could increase market share temporarily for a brand? Yes, absolutely, Lauren. So you can look at that at the trends over time. That's where we saw Aloe Yoga sort of blow up here. Look at Aloe on their Black Friday sale, go to 37% market share across these. So that's a really good question. So yeah, when there's a physical new brick and mortar location you put there, or you run some sort of advertisement, you can also see which segment that it actually performed well with. Can you differentiate between e-com and brick and mortar? Kellyanne, you want to take that?
Sure. We do. And our default, though, is brick and mortar. And we go through a process of tagging each transaction to see if we can clearly identify whether it's an online transaction. We look for some attributes within the transaction itself. If we can, we qualify it as an online e-commerce transaction.
Cool. Can we also look at spend data by category as a whole instead of selected individual brands? Yes, you can look at it as a spend category as a whole. So if you go to segments and you go to brand spend, you can pick these categories or subcategories. So now we're looking at just active and athleisure, and you can do that. Like a reason you might want to do that, Ian, is if you're looking at trends over time, you can look at like Lululemon's growth versus the athleisure category growth and compare the two. That's a good question. Um, we will do a few more questions here, and then we'll have to close this up. Let's see. What is the history of spend? Can we see the segment brand preferences via spend changing over time? Yeah. The short of that is the history that we have currently is to back to 2023. And yeah, you can see the preferences by segment over time in that trends tab. Oh, here's a good one for you. Kellyanne, are all major credit cards covered here? And what is the bias? Is there any particular credit cards that we don't have here?
To cover all major credit cards. That being said, it's a massive data set, right? And there are intrinsic biases, right? I mean, this is credit and debit data, so there are certain demographics that you don't see exactly aligned with the US population distribution. That being said, because of our scale, we make up for it in terms of, representation, and you can fine tune the data a bit to make sure it's perfectly aligned with the US bar, like you
Yep.
saw with geo distribution.
Okay. Anthony, are restaurant brands available? Yeah, sorry I didn't go through restaurant brands, but you can click restaurants and boy, they are available in detail. So yeah, you can get whatever you want here with restaurants. Can you talk to the middleman versus the merchant? Like if I buy Nikes and a new car battery at Amazon, is that is that Nike spend? So it's only at the merchant level. So let's say you go to Foot Locker and you buy Adidas. We're not going to capture that. All we're going to see is that there was a purchase at a Foot Locker. Kellyanne, am I
That
capturing
is
that correctly?
100%. That is 100% correct. We only see where you're spending the money. We don't see what you're spending it on.
Okay. Hey guys, these are really good questions. Last one, will there be a recording sent out? Yes, Robert, there will. But that is all the time that we have today. Hey, thank you everyone for sticking with us. If you're interested in this offer, spatial.ai/spend offer, I am so pumped about this. Email me if you have any questions. A few of you had questions specifically for Callion, and you can also reach out to Affinity for those more detailed credit card insights. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.